Hello and welcome. I'm Dan Lake, educational psychologist, and I'm joined in this video by Harriet Maydew, educational psychologist. We work for Warwickshire Educational Psychology Service, and we're here to provide you with an introduction to an approach known as paired reading. It's a really easy, fun, accessible approach that anyone can use, and it's a great way to share in reading with children. We're going to talk about why we're recommending this approach, how to do paired reading, and we'll also have a look at a couple of examples of using paired reading in practice. Okay, so why should you consider doing or using paired reading? It's been found to have loads of different benefits, and some of these include children's confidence in reading, and their enjoyment of reading books has been shown to increase as a result of the approach. Children tend not to be as fearful or as disinterested in reading sessions anymore, but instead look forward to sharing the reading with you. Obviously, children's reading skills improve because of paired reading, so they're likely to be able to read a greater variety of words with a greater level of accuracy, with less errors, and more quickly than before. So over time, you will notice an improvement in their reading skills and how beautifully and confidently they are reading. And finally, because paired reading provides a really great opportunity for quality time between parent and child, or adult and child, the research suggests that children's behaviour at home can also improve as a result of paired reading as a happy byproduct of sorts, and that it can help to improve relationships between children and their parents or caregivers. Okay, so what do you need in place to give paired reading a go? The first thing, stating the obvious, is a book. But the crucial thing is that the child chooses the book. It should be a book that they like, or like the look of, or interested in, or are motivated by in some way, because we know that everyone reads better from books that they like. The books could come from school, from home, from a family member, or from your local library. And don't worry, if we're given the responsibility of children to pick the book, don't worry if a book seems too hard at first, because once you get into the approach, most children will soon get used to picking books that aren't too hard. The second thing that you're going to need is time to do the paired reading, the session itself. So try very hard to do some paired reading nearly every day if you can. So you need only do sort of 5 minutes to 15 minutes at the very most. Unless, of course, you both want to, you and the child both want to carry on. We should never be looking to make people do paired reading when they really want to go away and do something else, because the focus is all about enjoying the book and enjoying the time that you spend together. So don't ever force or expect a child to go ahead and do paired reading unless they're ready. To make it manageable for you as the adult who may be watching this video, who may be doing paired reading at home, it may also be helpful to have a little bit of a think about whether there's another parent or significant adult that you can share the responsibility with, to make it manageable for both of you. The third thing you need to think about is finding somewhere quiet and comfy, a place to do paired reading. Try to find a place that's quiet where there aren't too many distractions, because you're going to find it really hard to concentrate if it's noisy or if there's lots going on. Try to find a place that's comfy, because if you're uncomfortable, you'll both be shifting about and fidgeting, and you won't be able to carefully look at the book as closely together as you would like. And you'll also need to find a spot where you can both sit side by side, so that you are looking at the book together from the same position. The fourth area to think about is new ways of helping. It's often harder for older people to learn new ways than it is for younger people to learn new ways. With paired reading, the hardest things to get used to are things like when the reader gets a word wrong, the helper just tells the reader what to say. That's a little bit different. Maybe you're used to getting the child to sound it out or break it down. You don't need to do any of that. When the reader gets the word right, the helper should just smile, show some pleasure, maybe show a little bit of praise, maybe say that they've done good. But don't nag or fuss about the words that the reader gets wrong. And we're going to show you all of this in action in a moment. And finally, the fifth thing that you need to be prepared for or prepared to do is to talk about the book. So as adults, as helpers, we should show an interest in the book that the child's chosen. We should be talking about what we think might happen in the book, talking about the pictures, talking about the book as it's going on or predicting what might be happening next. And it's best if you save that talking for just before you start the session, just at the end of the session, but also at the end of a page or when you get to a natural break in the story. If you do it at other times, the child might just lose a little bit of the flow and an understanding of what's happening in the story. Listen to each other, but as the adult, I guess our advice would be to be careful that you don't do all of the talking. Okay, so hopefully it's all sounding so far so good, but what does it actually look like? There are two steps to paired reading. In the next section, the adult is referred to as the helper and the child is referred to as the reader. So the first section of paired reading is what's known as reading together. So the helper and the reader both read the words out loud together, but be careful not to go too fast. Helpers should make their speed, so your speed as the adult, as fast or as slow as the child can go, okay? So the expectation is that the child will read every word. If the child then struggles and then gets it right, then you as the adult show pleasure and you share a little bit of praise. But don't let the child struggle for any longer than about 5 seconds. If the reader struggles too long or struggles and then gets it wrong, then as the adult, all you have to do is step in, say the word right for them, and make sure that the reader then, or the child then, copies the word that you've just said, the word that you've just corrected. Make sure that the child is keeping their eyes on the page and is looking at the words. And I know that sounds strange, but just try to track the words on the page so that they are keeping their focus. And it can help if one of you, preferably the child, points to the word that they're reading with their finger so that they're running their finger across the page. The second stage to paired reading is reading alone. So when you are reading together and the reader feels confident enough, he or she might want to read alone for a little bit. So you should agree a signal, agree a way of them asking you or letting you know that they're ready for you to be quiet and for them to try reading for a bit on their own. So it could be a knock, it could be a non-verbal hand signal, or a squeeze of your hand with their hand. You don't really want it to be verbal. You don't want the child to be saying be quiet, because again, they're going to lose the flow of their reading. They're going to lose their place on the page. And at that point, when you've had the signal, you know as the adult that you go quiet and you sit and listen to them read for as long as they can. If they then reach the point where they struggle with a word at any point, then it's the advice I gave a moment ago. If they struggle for more than 5 seconds, or if they struggle and get a word wrong, then you just step back in as the adult and you just give them the correct pronunciation of the word. Then you ask them to copy that word with you, and then you pick the rest of the reading back up again together. So you would be reading at the same time, the child's running their finger across the page until the child gives you the signal again that they're confident to read alone again.
Brilliant. So as Dan's talked through there, he's provided an introduction to the approach and talked through the steps of paired reading. What we wanted to have a look at now is to show you what paired reading looks like in practice. But before we show you 2 short videos, we'd like to thank the children who so kindly let us record them reading, and our colleague in the service for producing the videos and providing a great example of how to facilitate paired reading. In the first video, which is about 3 minutes long, we see Lily read. She finds it pretty tricky here, but shows great determination.
Would you like to pick a book? Any book. Any book that intrigues you?
This one.
That was super quick. Are you sure that's what you want to choose? Okay, what made you choose it?
It's cool.
It looks cool. Okay, that's a good start. So, pull your chair in for me. Okay. So the book's called Whatever Next by Jill Murphy. So, open it up. Okay. So what we're going to do today is something a little bit different, and it's called paired reading. And what we're going to start with doing is reading together. All right. And what would really help me is, as you read, if you can put your finger under each word so I can see what you're reading and I can go exactly at your pace when we read together. Is that okay? Should we give it a try? Okay. Can I go to the moon? Asked Baby Bear.
No, you can't, said Mrs. Bear. It's bath time.
Anyway, you have
to find
a rocket first. Absolutely brilliant, well done. So we're going to carry on reading together, Lils, all right? But this time, when you feel like you want to have a go on your own, oh, fantastic, a secret signal, well done. So if you knock on the table, that tells me that you want to have a go at reading on your own, okay? And when you come across a word that you're not sure about, I'll start reading with you again. Does that sound okay? Should we have a go? Have a practice? Okay, let's start here. Baby Bear found a rocket in the cupboard under the stairs. He found a space helmet on the training board in the kitchen, and a pair of space boots on the mat by the front door.
He packed his teddy and some food for the journey and took off up to the chimney. Whoosh! Out into the night.
Fab. So that was an example there of paired reading in practice. And what we can see there are some of the advantages and benefits of the paired reading approach. So the first advantage is that we can find that children can become disinterested in reading when they need to read books from reading programmes. So perhaps we might see this typically in infant school settings when children might move up levels with their reading. But if children find their reading tricky, they might get stuck at a particular level, or they might not move up the levels as quickly as their friends. And this might mean the content of the book might not be that interesting to them. So paired reading is great because your child can choose any book that they like the look of. And we tend to find that this increases children's interest and enthusiasm in wanting to read. The second benefit is that the child's in control. So we saw in the video that the young person used her finger to guide the pace, and she was able to communicate when she wanted to read alone by tapping on the table. She also knew that it would only be for a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, which makes it more predictable and more manageable. Providing our children with some autonomy of their reading can help reduce some of those feelings of worry. The third advantage is that there's no failure. So because the adult or helper swoops in and reads the words for the child if they're struggling on a word for a few seconds, this means that the child doesn't experience failure. They're not told off for getting a word wrong, but instead just provided with the correct word, and we carry on reading. The fourth advantage is that the child gets lots of praise. So as we could see in that example there, the young person got praise at the end of each page, but also when she got those tricky words correct as well. And we know that it's much nicer to be told when you're doing well instead of just being moaned at when you go wrong. And the fifth advantage of paired reading is that it helps the child's understanding of the book. So there's a huge emphasis on understanding. So if we think about it, when we're learning to read, we can sometimes focus so hard on trying to work out how to pronounce the words in the sentence that by the time we've got to the end of the sentence, we've forgotten what the beginning was. So by having the adult read with the child's able to read sentences fluently, so without needing to stop and start. And this helps children understand what they're reading, and also if they then come across a new word, they're able to give it a sensible guess based on what it might say, based on what they've just read. And as Dan said at the beginning, one aspect of paired reading is by talking with the child at the end or the beginning about what's going on in the book, and that helps with their understanding too. Okay, so we've got a second example now of this video is a little bit shorter, of a young person who's achieving roughly where he should be for his age with his reading, but he's quite reluctant to read. So we really thank him for letting us hear him read in this video. What is a great example within this video as well is the range of books or reading materials that a child can pick up. So you'll see in this video that the young person reads out a very unusual shopping list, and this just shows the range of materials children can use. So it could be that if they're really into factual books, that they could pick up a fact book and you could still use a paired reading approach, or perhaps you're reading a recipe together to make some cakes. This approach could also be used in that way too.
At the supermarket, the first thing I notice is our trolley. It's enormous. I can't even reach the handle, and there's a really funny smell.
Mum doesn't seem to notice. She just hands me that shopping list and sets off. 6 monkeys, 2 giraffes, 3 lizards, 3
kilos tortoises, 27 parrots, give or take, pride of lions, 2 bales of hay, 5 tins of lion food, vegetables, fruit, nuts, ink splodges. Right, says Mum. Reptiles first, chameleons or iguanas? We'll need 2.
Great. So that was another example of paired reading. So we're hoping that now we've provided you with a few short steps on how to do paired reading, as well as being able to see it in practice. This has provided a bit of an introduction to this approach. We've talked about why it's beneficial and a helpful approach to use with your young people as well, but we're mindful that we've gone through it quite quickly. So if there's anything that you'd like to revisit, please feel free to rewind the video to recap on anything that we've been talking about in this video. We just thought we'd provide a few next steps to think about of some things that you might want to do to begin thinking about paired reading and using this approach with your young person. So the first next step is, where might be that cosy and quiet place that you could read with your young person? Where might that be within your home? The second one is, when might paired reading fit within your daily routine? So when would work best for your young person and for you in terms of your schedule? Is it at the beginning of the day, or is it after dinner as part of that wind down before bed? What would work best? And that third question of when might be a good time to talk to your young person about paired reading so that they could come up with their secret signal and perhaps start to get them interested in this approach. It's important to remember that we know whenever we learn a new skill, it can take quite a bit of energy and perseverance at the beginning. But once we've learnt the skill, it becomes easier over time and with practice, a bit like learning to drive. We hope you have the chance to give it a go and to learn how to do paired reading together and enjoy using this approach with your young person. And just to finish, thank you from Dan and I for listening, and we hope you enjoy giving paired reading a go.